Hello! Welcome to another episode of Mouth Dancing with your host, Young. Thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to talk about sausage festivals. You've heard of this concept, I'm sure. It's when you go to a party or some sort of gathering and it's mostly guys, and then people say, oh, it's a real sausage fest in here, isn't it? I don't know, it's a joke about men's penises, basically. They're saying it's just like sausages everywhere. But I was thinking about this expression because there are a lot of different kinds of penises, right? And there are a lot of different kinds of sausages as well. I mean, some guys' penises could be more like hot dogs, or frankfurters, or wieners, or maybe a kielbasa, or maybe a Vienna sausage, or I don't know, there's just all kinds of different kinds of tubular meats like that could be compared to a penis, right? And for every kind of tubular meat, there's probably, a similar penis out there that you could compare it to. So it doesn't really make sense to always say a sausage party, because not every guy's penis is like a sausage. Maybe one guy's is like an Italian sausage, and one guy's is like a breakfast sausage, and then another guy's is like a Vienna sausage. Or maybe it's not like a sausage at all, maybe it's more like a hot dog, which is pretty different, I think. I think they're made differently. I don't think hot dogs have casings, do they, like a sausage does? Like a sausage, they take like a intestine or something and they fill it up with ground meat, right? And seasonings and things. But I think hot dogs are made differently. I think they're just kind of formed in a mold type of thing. You get a bunch of leftover meat and grind it up and then put it into a mold and make it stick together somehow and then cook it. So it's pretty different. And, penises are kind of like that too. So I think sometimes you want to say, this is a real hot dog party, isn't it? Or this is a real wiener festival or a wiener celebration, right? Or this is kind of like a Frankfurter soiree. Or you could even say it's a mix of all the above, right? This is a real sausage, hot dog, wiener, Frankfurter get-together to account for the diversity of penises out there that could be attending the event or the little party or what have you, right? Have you ever heard this idea that if you're a musician, you have to write your own songs or else people kind of think you're not really a musician or not an authentic musician? Like, you can't just be a performer, you have to be the songwriter as well. Like, those people get a lot more street cred, I think. They're thought of as like more genuine artists. Like, someone will think, oh, a pop singer like, Madonna. She's not a true artist because she doesn't write most of her songs. She just performs them. But then they'll think of someone like Elliott Smith, on the other hand. They'll say, oh, he's a real artist because he writes all of his songs and performs them. Or he did. He's dead now. But he's a real artist compared to Madonna. But then how come the same standard isn't applied to actors? Sometimes you have someone who will write and act in something, right? But that's pretty rare. And they're generally not really good at both. They might be really good at writing, but pretty bad at acting. Like Quentin Tarantino. I mean, it's debatable too whether he's a good writer or not. But his acting is awful, right? Whenever he cameos in his movies, it's always pretty shit acting. But for the most part, actors are not involved in writing screenplays. They're focused on their craft of acting, right? But no one's gonna say, oh, Brad Pitt, he's not a real actor because he doesn't write his own movies. So shouldn't the same standard apply to actors as it does to musicians? I guess I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here because I don't think you have to write your own songs to be considered a real musician, right? Performing them and bringing them to life and having stage presence and charisma and all that is a talent in itself. If you can do that well, you don't necessarily have to write your songs too. I mean, no one's going to say, oh, that John Malkovich guy, he fucking sucks, man. He doesn't even write his own movies. He just acts in movies that other people wrote. What a poser, or what a fake. He's an imposter, right? No one's going to say that about him. So if you're going to put your money where your mouth is, make sure it's at least a $20 bill, as they say. You know, you're not going to put coins in your mouth, because that would taste gross and probably have lots of bacteria, and it would be heavy. So that's what I'm talking about. If any of you out there skateboard, you've probably experienced this. You know, people will be walking by or driving by, and they'll yell, "Do a kickflip!" This happens fairly frequently. I'm sure every skater's experienced it probably at least once. It's kind of weird if you think about it, right? Like, imagine if you were just walking around yelling that to like all kinds of people, right? Like, you see someone on a bicycle and you're like, "Do a wheelie!" Or you see some people playing basketball and you say, "Do a slam dunk!" You know? Or you see a guy busking, right? And you tell him to play the Freebird solo! I mean, sometimes that kind of thing happens to buskers probably, but it's pretty rare. I think most people aren't as obnoxious towards these other groups of people, but for some reason I think they feel like they can do it to skateboarders. I'm not sure why. And I'm here to complain about it. I'm here to raise a stink about it and protest it. I think it's disrespectful. You know, we're not show monkeys here to entertain you. We're just trying to mind our own business and do our own thing, you know. Not here to impress you or, I don't know, prove anything to you. So stop doing that. Unless you want to get smacked in the face. No, I'm not actually calling for violence. I don't think it requires that level of response. But I do think it's pretty annoying. I know some skaters don't care that much and they think it's kind of funny. Maybe they'll even do a kickflip for the person. But I'm personally not one of those people. Also, this is something else that happens a lot. You'll be skating, right? And then someone will approach you and say, "Hey, I used to do that. I used to skate. Can I try your skateboard?" And, you know, they'll get on and awkwardly push around and, I don't know, try a kickflip or something. Sometimes, occasionally, it'll be someone who's actually really good, but most of the time, the person is really rusty and maybe they were never that good in the first place, and it's just kind of annoying, and you're like, oh, okay. You have to have like this fake moment of bonding with this person, and it's just annoying mostly. And you don't really give a shit if they can skate or not. It's like, if you used to skate, why don't you just keep doing it? No one cares if you quit, right? You don't have to come up to the skaters and prove that you used to do it. No one cares. It's kind of like that Radiohead song, "Everyone Plays Guitar." Well, everyone used to skate. It's kind of that common these days. Now imagine the same scenario with a bicycle. You see someone riding their bike and you're like, "Hey, I used to ride bicycles as a kid. Can I ride your bicycle and show you that I can ride it?" That doesn't really happen. Or you're not going to go, you know, to a softball game and say, "Hey, I played softball when I was a kid. Let me join in the game." I mean, that could possibly happen in like a really casual pickup situation, right? Pickup game. But if it's like official softball teams playing, no one's going to do that. It's another situation where people, for some reason, think that it's okay to just kind of be sort of disrespectful or condescending, or patronizing maybe. Don't do those two things. Don't yell at people to do tricks because we're not circus performers. And don't approach us and say, "Hey, I used to skate. Let me try your skateboard." Most of the time, these days I just try to ignore people who do that stuff. When I was a young, angry hothead, I would get angry and cuss at them and say, "Fuck you." But now I'm just like, I either ignore them or I say, make up some lie like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go actually. I was just about to leave." I do have one question I'd like to pose before I close out this episode. You know the expression living rent-free in your head that's really popular these days online? Like you see that a lot if someone is criticizing someone a lot or something. They'll say, "Oh, looks like I'm living rent-free in your head." It's like a way of saying, "Seems like you're thinking about me a lot. Are you obsessed with me or something?" It's kind of a weird metaphor though. Are you saying like someone's head is like an apartment or a house and you're living in there? How could you live inside someone's head? There's no room in there. I mean, it fits the brain and that's about it. I mean, I don't think an adult-sized human could fit in someone else's head, much less live in there, which would require furniture and possessions and, I don't know, just personal accessories, you know, belongings, effects. How are you going to fit all that in there? And what's the rent situation? Are you paying rent to live there? Is there a mortgage, or are you squatting in there? Or maybe it's like subsidized housing. Is the government paying for you to live there? Or maybe there was like a rent moratorium, like during part of the pandemic. I think some landowners did that, or some landlords did that, right? Like, "Oh, you guys don't have to pay rent for a few months because of the pandemic, and we understand you're in a tough situation. Maybe you lost your job or something." Is that the situation? How did you get to this point where you're living in someone's head? It's such a dumb expression. It's kind of one of those buzzword type things that people just say all the time now. Like dumpster fire was really popular a while back. Everything was a dumpster fire for a while. I really hate these kinds of buzzwords that people use all the time when they get popular. I'm not sure why it bothers me so much, but it's just like, think of something better to say. What else was there? Well, here's a really old one. How about don't quit your day job? Because supposedly what that person was doing was subpar, maybe. Like it wasn't their usual area of expertise. So they weren't performing as well, or weren't doing as good of a job as they would in their normal job, I guess. Seems like a real boomer expression, right? So don't say these stupid things, because you just sound like an asshole when you do it. And it's not funny. It's not original. Maybe the first time you hear it, it's kind of funny. You're like, haha, living rent-free in their head. That's kind of clever. Then after you hear it like 1,000 times, and it's just not funny anymore. And it was never that funny in the first place. Because it's a really, 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 really stupid metaphor. Or analogy, or what have you. So don't say it. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank you for listening. This was kind of an instructional episode, and I wanted it to be that way, because I want you to learn. And I was learning as well while I was teaching you. Teachers learn as they teach. And as you learn, you might learn how to teach someday. And the cycle repeats itself. We're all teachers and learners at some point, or both at once. Thank you, and see you next week. Bye.